Hello, everyone. My name is Dean of the InkGuild. As our episodes tend to be pretty long, this is our Shorthand series, where we compile our favorite stories from each episode for your enjoyment. If you enjoy our content, be sure to look up the InkGuild on YouTube. Catch me editing our recording sessions live on Twitch at twitch.tv/theinkguild_Twitch, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the InkGuild. One last thing, but a huge thank you to Peachy Keen for her song September as Shorthand's intro song. So, without further ado, let's get right into the highlights. How's it going, everyone? My name is Dean. Welcome to episode 2 of the InkGuild Podcast. I'm joined today by Jessica, and we also have a new friend of ours coming in. Her name's Alex. You want to say hi?
Hi.
So, I guess for this first part, let's just talk about Alex. And more specifically, like, just how she kind of got into writing. So, I'll hand it over to Alex with this first question. What were some of your earliest influences when it came to like writing and storytelling?
I don't really know where to start. I've been writing basically as long as I can remember. But if we're talking about like stories that I read when I was little, I find that I tended to lean towards fantasy stories, which may be unsurprising, as you know, that's primarily what I write, and then also stories with animals. Apparently, my favorite book when I was little was a picture book called Go Dogs Go. I apparently had it memorized. Like, I picked up reading really fast when I learned it in school, and so I was reading like chapter books pretty much right off the bat. So I read like Magic Tree House, and when I got a little bit older, I started getting into like the Warriors books, and then there's like a really specific genre of kids chapter books that are about like girls who get to like live on a boat with dolphins or get to live on a ranch with horses, like that kind of genre I was really into as well.
So was there a specific moment where you thought, you know what, I could probably start doing this, like I could probably start being a writer too?
I remember like when I was like in elementary school, when I was really little, everyone was always like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for a while, I was just like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a vet. And then at one point, I started saying I wanted to be a writer. I don't remember at what point that was. It just kind of happened. I can think back to early elementary school and know that I had like story ideas that I was trying to write all the way back then. So I don't know if it was so much like at one moment I decided I wanted to be a writer. It was at like one moment I realized that I already wanted to be a writer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's just kind of like it feels as if you were just kind of doing it the entire time.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Anything or any other kind of early stories that are worth talking about?
Actually, yes. After this, when I was in like end of grade 4 until like grade 5 and grade 6, was actually when I started developing my planet that that my story is set on.
You'd been developing that since grade 4?
Yes.
Oh my
I
god.
sure have.
That's incredible. That's actually incredible.
It's been around for more than a decade. If you're wondering how my world building gets so in depth, that's why.
Yeah, like literally years worth of like speaking. So tell us about it. Like, what's this planet called in the first place?
So the main planet, because I actually have a whole solar system of it, but the main planet is called Catariana. It was named that because I had a thing for cats at the time. So the word cat ended up being in a lot of different names, most of which have been changed by now, but that one stuck. I actually had 2 stories in development at this time that still exist in my head, and they kind of like came together to create Catariana as it is now. Like when I was in, I think, grade 6 was when I was like introduced to fan fiction. That was like when I started going through my anime phase.
Mm.
So I just like I had a bunch of friends who were into that kind of stuff, and I was like, "Oh, fan fiction! I've never heard of that before, but it sounds fun, and I have ideas." So I made a fan fiction account and didn't look back. One of the fandoms that I had just gotten into at the time, which I'm still technically a part of, is called Vocaloid. So they're still up on fanfiction.net, by the way, because I never took them down. But yeah, I have a bunch of Vocaloid fanfictions, and then the biggest one that I worked on was a crossover between Vocaloid and an anime called Vampire Knight, which I never finished that fan fiction either. Sometimes I still get emails from people like leaving comments on it going, "When are you gonna finish this?" And I'm like, it's been more than 5 years.
Oh my
I
god.
find this is a thing that I actually do a lot, is that if I look back at a lot of my early works, a lot of it is actually more planning than actual writing. So I'll have like lists of characters, like what they look like, what kind of clothes they like to wear,
Mhm.
like all like this detail about them, and then kind of where I want their story to go. But then I have like only a few chapters of the actual story written. I like the planning aspect of it though. That's why I have like 7 folders of ideas.
Yeah, literal folders, actual literal folders, and it's like nuts to me that like
My
I
baby.
think yeah, like I think I've put in time doing writing because I've been working on my story at least for like 5 years now. Nah, it's not like more than a decade. It hasn't even touched a decade. Like you've been working on it since grade 4. That's insane.
I'd say grade 5 would be a better approximation. I say grade 4 because grade 4 was when like the ideas started, but they didn't actually turn into anything solid until grade 5. When I hit high school, I started wanting to take the ideas I had put into my fan fiction and start making them my own stories with my own characters. If that makes sense. And so I just
Yeah.
kind of the need for writing fan fiction kind of fell away. When I was in grade 9, I took a creative writing class for the first time and was introduced to NaNoWriMo, National
Mm.
Novel Writing. And I participated for that for the first time. Every day in class, we had to come in, we had to spend like a certain amount of time writing. And so she's like, you can write either just like whatever's on your mind, or you can write for NaNoWriMo. And so
Mm.
I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. I want to write novels. So I started trying to do it. It didn't go well the first year, but then I did it again every year in high school. So I did it grade 9 through all the way through grade 12. Finished it in grade 10 and grade 12. And I feel like that was the point where I really pushed myself, and that was the point where my writing actually started getting like solidly good because I was forcing myself to write every single day.
So, you know, you'd been writing for such a long time, and I wanted to ask actually, like, what was your support system like?
Well, my mom has been super supportive. The first time I completed NaNoWriMo, actually, like I managed to complete the whole novel, and I have 2 printed copies of it in my house.
That's
Because she
incredible.
wanted a copy. Creative writing teachers, for sure, have always been super helpful.
Mm.
Like, and then I was talking about when I was first coming up with this world. Like, I had my 2 stories going on. One of them was actually written with a friend of mine, like the idea we came up with together. So I've had like a ton of friends supporting me like the whole time. If you ever tell someone like, "Oh, I want to be a writer," or "Oh, I want to do X art related thing," a lot of people are very dismissive of that, and are like, "Oh, you can't be anything. You're just going to be another starving artist." It's something that I've struggled a lot with, even though I know like my mom obviously is there to support me. I'm not just saying that because I know she's gonna listen to this later. um, but like, yeah, I know she's there to support me, even if it's not the like safest route to go through in our society.
So, I want to start talking about topics, and I think the first topic that I do want to start talking about is female protagonists in stories, specifically with YA, because that's the one that I'm more familiar with. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I guess my first thing on that is what's our opinion on female YA protagonists in general?
There's
Oh,
not
wow.
enough of them, and they're not diverse enough, and basically that's my opinion on them.
All right, so we have a good opinion right off the start.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Alex. I think that there's
Excuse me.
a lot of YA books that have a female protagonist, but more like a Bella Swan type character where stuff happens to them. They don't happen to stuff.
The other thing that I noticed when I was thinking about this earlier is that a lot of the books that I like that have a female protagonist are usually like a female protagonist that I like are usually part of ensemble casts where there's like one or two female protagonists and then a bunch of male protagonists as well.
Like, what are some of the tropes and some of the cliches that we can associate with the female protagonist? At least with the stories. Yeah, at least with the stories that we read. Yeah, and yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, basically, that's like the main one. The other one that I see a lot is the not like other girls. Less so now because I think that's kind of gone out of fashion, but especially like books from like 5 years ago was really big.
Oh,
especially in like contemporary YA fiction, it was like, yeah, I'm not like other girls and blah 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 blah.
I think one of mine is that they really go into depth with, like, it's either they go super in depth with the female's appearance or just not at all.
And I've noticed a lot, especially in like fantasy and like urban fantasy, they always like the female normal looking person, they always are, you know, like can't ever just be like a normal looking person.
It's never just, yeah, she had brown hair and brown eyes and everything was fine.
There's this one series that Jessica's got me into called the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, and I think the main character is the perfect, like, I guess pretty much the perfect summary of like having a very like visually stunning YA protagonist, where she has like
one of the ones I was thinking of when I was saying that.
Yeah, like she has like, you know, like fair skin, golden hair, but it's the eyes that like is like that's the biggest deal about Aelin, where it's like blue, like turquoise like gold.
Turquoise with like a golden ring or something.
Yeah.
Ash River eyes.
They're not my favorite books.
Do you want to go down that tangent? We definitely can.
Oh boy. My biggest problem with them, with Sarah J. Maas's writing style in general, is the extremely forced heteronormativity and the questionable relationship dynamics.
Oh, I absolutely agree, though. I absolutely agree. Like, were it not for everyone kind of staying to like a boy-girl relationship, I would want Dorian and Fenris right now.
Oh God.
Yeah, like
my biggest one that I remember being like really upset about when I got to was, or like not upset about it, but I was like really, you're gonna try and make me believe that they're in love, was spoilers I guess for anyone who hasn't read it, was Manon and Dorian.
Oh no, that's my favorite ship though.
Okay, because my thing is, it's not that I don't think they could work, it's just I feel like the way she put them together didn't work. Like I just
they didn't get enough time.
So many times to like my friends, I did not buy their like the budding relationship when it started. I'm sorry, I just did not.
Yeah, well, it's always fun to talk about these things, right? Like personally, I love the series, and despite me acknowledging the obvious kind of issues with it, like I really like the characters. The moments are really good, and I think compared to its sister franchises, A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I haven't read, and her newest book, Crescent City, which I haven't read to completion as of right now, but that could change. Like Throne of Glass really is something that has its moments, but ultimately, you really have to think, like, and I hate saying this because sometimes it doesn't always stick, but like you really do have to get maybe to the third book.
Yeah, because that's true.
Because that's when Rowan's introduced, and it's like it really fleshes out Aelin's character a little bit better. Because as I guess as an assassin, she's not super one note. Like she still has a lot of depth to her character, obviously, but like when she finally starts embracing who she is, there's a lot more, there's a lot more character to her. And I think
that was one of the things I thought when I was reading it was I hated Selena in the first 2 books, and then as soon as she became Aelin, I was like, okay, she's not as bad.
Yeah, like that's actually a trope that I wanted to discuss, and maybe maybe I just haven't read enough series to really find that out. But like, it takes a good protagonist in general, not just female, but like it takes a good protagonist with a decent enough character arc to keep me invested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Like I obviously can't speak from experience because I haven't read enough like female-led stories. But like, what would you guys say? Like, out of the stories that you guys have read with a female protagonist, like how have their character arcs been handled, and like how has their like fleshing out and developing their characters, like how has that worked?
One of the authors I read a lot of is Cassandra Clare, obviously, because I've loved her for many, many years. And the Mortal Instruments books came out, like the first 3, Clare was kind of, I mean, I liked her, but it wasn't like amazing or like groundbreaking or anything. And she was kind of annoying sometimes. But then like by like the 3rd book and then with the other 3 books in the series, she kind of, I don't know, she was like less annoying in a way. So I feel like that was a decent story arc.
See, I would disagree with you. I actually don't like Cassandra Clare at all. And I think she's the worst female protagonist I've read. I actually like her better in the later books when she's not the protagonist.
Myself, I'm not too familiar with Cassandra Clare anymore because I haven't read anything past... To be honest, I think I haven't read anything past City of Glass. Because after City of Glass, I was like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Honestly, I read the 3 books that follow City of Glass, and I was asking myself that with every single chapter. I was like, what the hell is going on in this book? I'm so confused.
And that's actually another thing that I wanted to talk about. It's just how do you write a good... I guess, like, I started off with, like, writing a good female character, but, like, we can just go into, like, open it up to, like, writing people of color, like, writing, gay characters, basically LGBTQ plus characters in general. And my lead character is in the world, she is technically half white, half black, so she is a person of color, and her best friend is from an island, I think southwest of where the first story is set. So basically your 2 main characters are people of color, and like it's nerve-wracking to me, like, kind of thinking about it sometimes, because like I'm just kind of writing these characters how I want them to be written. I'm not really accounting for everything, like, kind of around me. Like, I obviously know, like, the climate that is kind of around us, but like I'm not trying to ham fist any kind of agenda into it, or like I'm not trying to fit to certain tropes all that much. Like, I'm just writing my character how I see it. Do you know what I mean?
That, like, the best way to go about it is because, like, your character, even if your character is like biracial, that shouldn't be their entire identity.
Oh yeah.
And I think people who like go out of their way to make that their character's entire identity, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. The best way to go about it, in my experience, is write them like a normal person, because that's what they are, and then do your research to avoid offensive tropes, and talk to the people that you're trying to represent and get their opinion on it in case you missed something.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, honestly, I read an article about like writing characters that are different from you. I mean, I'm pale with blonde hair and blue eyes, right? Like, so writing people who are a lot different than me. I was reading an article about it, and it was like, thought everything about your character first, and then add that in last, because like it doesn't define them in any way. Like, it doesn't make them any like different than anyone else. So that's usually how I do it. I usually, give my character their personality and stuff first, and then I kind of keep that in my mind, but add it on in like writing after, so that I kind of have their whole character like formed or I kind of put that one piece in. But I think
way to do it, because then if you're like, oh, I'm gonna write a black character, then you're gonna have all these ideas of what a black person is like in your head before you sit down to write it. Whereas if you just like write the character first, then you go, oh, and they're black. Then of course there's also having to balance like if you take writing a story that takes place in our world, obviously being black is going to affect them in some ways that it wouldn't affect a white person. So that's also something else to keep in mind.
Yeah. Like,
yeah,
I think even if you're not setting it, or even if you're setting in your own world where you kind of define how everything is, how everything is set, like who the races are, how they all behave and whatever, like you can't really, you still can't escape like different cultural norms and like the audience, especially that you're putting out to, right? Because if you like, even if like the tropes that, it can be so easy to not kind of include all the terrible history that people of color and LGBTQ plus people have experienced, but like you are putting your work out there to people that have gone through these things, right? So I guess my point is like you should still be mindful no matter what, write for yourself, but just kind of be mindful of where your work is going to be going to. And I guess just to play off a tangent, like, can you imagine the kind of stories that like people would be making up with our stories and our characters?
I think about that all the time. I'm so curious. This is like one of my goals as a writer. If I ever get published, as I plan to, hopefully, I want to know the fan fiction people write about my story.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be that writer who just logs on her Tumblr under like a false username and just like writes fan fiction of my own characters for free on the internet, and then like talks to everyone and being like, yeah, I really liked your story, dude, it was awesome, yeah, those characters are great, like you did such a good job, and then being like, oh my god, you made artwork, thank you.
Oh my god, I would be so appreciative of like artwork though. Like,
I don't understand how some authors are so against things like fan fiction and fan art, because I'm just like, how can you not love seeing people being inspired by your stuff? Is that not why you became a writer, to inspire people?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, like honestly, it's like, don't you want people to like aren't you grateful that someone picked up your book, read it, and thought it was awesome, so they spent more time on it?
Yeah, like even like, to be honest, even if it got like really, really dirty, like if it went to start going into like smut territory, and I know that's such a weird tangent, but like even like smutty fan art, I probably wouldn't look at it for too long, but I'd still be appreciative, be like, okay, cool, thanks so much.
It would depend on which characters it was of.
Yeah, like I obviously like, oh my god, can you imagine like the different kinds of ships that people would start making of your characters?
Another thing, I have so many like sibling relationships in my stories, and I'm just like, well, that's
yeah. If I know anything about the internet, oh no, you're gonna be waking up to a lot of different stories, Alex. Like, what's a memorable way that an author has introduced a character to you? Doesn't even have to be one of your favorite characters either. It just has to be like a good character introduction. Because for me, like, there's Leia Bardugo's Six of Crows duology, and I think from the very beginning I fell in love with Inej right off the bat.
Oh yeah. Oh my.
I think Inej and Kaz.
Yeah. Kaz's intro was like pretty good too, because you hear a lot about him at like the beginning of the book. And he just shows up, and he's kind of as bad as he sounds, but not really, because he's like, you're bad, you need not do every bad thing. Like, I'm just saving time here. I was like, that is awesome. Like, he's an efficient criminal.
Can I read the opening paragraph of a book? Recommend it. It's called The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. The intro is this. Carolyn, blood-drenched and barefoot, walked alone down the 2-lane stretch of blacktop that the Americans called Highway 78. Most of the librarians, Carolyn included, rode as the path of tacos, so of a Mexican joint they snuck out to sometimes. The guacamole, she remembered, is really good. Her stomach rumbled. Oak leaves, reddish-orange and delightfully crunchy, crackled underfoot as she walked. Her breath puffed white in the pre-dawn air. The obsidian knife she had used to murder Detective Miner lay nestled in the small of her back, sharp and secret. She was smiling.
Oh my god.
God.
That's a good character
Right.
intro.
Oh,
in my
hell
opinion.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Oh,
a
God.
great intro.
Another good character intro is definitely some of the kids in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Like, some of them are just so good. I think her name is Claire in the books. She's like this little pretty girl, but she's got this like monstrous mouth on the back of her head. So they like sit down at dinner, and the main character is just like meeting everyone. And this little girl just holds up like a turkey leg, puts it to the back of her head, lifts up her curls, and then just reveals the bare turkey leg. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was gonna say the other one that I had a really memorable character introduction for me was Vicious by V.E. Schwab.
ooh.
Ooh.
The first chapter, you're introduced with him like he's like grave digging basically. But then I remember like the second chapter, because the funny thing about this book is it's kind of like a superhero kind of book, and then the first line of chapter 2 is Victor drew a steady straight black line through the word Marvel. And I always thought that was really funny because it's about superheroes.
Oh yeah, V.E. Schwab is amazing.
Nice.
Her Darker Shade of Magic series has... Oh, it's so good.
Vicious is one of my like all-time favorite novels that I've read.
Nice.
Yeah, V.E. Schwab is like, I cannot recommend her enough for fantasy reading. She is like, obviously like one of my favorites. She's so good.
Mm.
I
Okay.
100% agree.
Yeah. All right. Okay. That was fun. But I think now, yeah, let's actually fully end it. So on Instagram, you can find me at Daniel Cordero, which is my full name. I'll leave that in the description. Alex, what about yours?
My Instagram is Whimsical Empyrean. Again, spelt funny. I'm sure you'll link that as well.
Yep. Jessica?
A very fictional review. No capitals, no spaces.
Yeah. All right. So I guess as a final thing, and I guess for future episodes moving forward, let's each recommend a book. Or let's each recommend a book. And I think mine would definitely, like, mine is a little bit biased because it's the one I'm reading right now, but Crescent City, which is Sarah J. Maas's most recent book. It's everything that you've come to really expect from her work. So, you know, like pretty nice story, like pretty nice like world building. Characters are pretty nice. Like their conversations are good. Alex, what's your recommendation?
I'm like, I just recommended 2 books. I don't have another one to recommend.
You could just restate it. Restate one.
Then I'll recommend, because it's less well known, I'll recommend The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins.
Cool. Want to tell us a little bit about it quickly?
Yes, actually, we were talking about female protagonists earlier. This one has a pretty good one. Her name's Carolyn. She grew up in a library that was disconnected from the normal world, and it kind of like follows her story after she gets locked out of said library that she grew up in. And it's a weird book, for the record. It's one of the weirdest books I've ever read. It's really good, and I really recommend it.
All right, Jessica, what's your recommendation?
Well, since I just finished the series, I'm gonna say Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. It's like a YA fantasy series, and there's a lot of magic and like shenanigans, and like it's funny, but it's also like it's amazing. There's lots of magic and like lots of unique things, and all of the characters are like phenomenal, and they're all very like fleshed out and everything, and I love all of them so much. Like there's a follow-up series I think that she just started writing to about one of the characters. So
Nice.
yeah, Maggie Stiefvater.
So good. I also recommend us.
All right, cool. This was episode 2 of the InkGuild Podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone, and goodbye.